Make sure your insurance doesn't come up short. Get gap cover with ALA. For more information, follow the links in the description. Hello everybody. Today, a bit of petrolhead philosophy. Here we have one of the best looking, best sounding, best driving cars on the market today. From a manufacturer with a real, genuine Formula One pedigree and an iconic badge. This is a car from one of the greatest sports car makers that even when the firm had a budget of only 50p and a packet of pork scratchings, could build stuff to take the fight to the might of Ferrari, Lamborghini and Porsche. And this car provides so much that all of us petrolheads say that we want: a singing, sweet, naturally responding engine with a beautiful 6-speed manual gear shift, and all wrapped in a rather spectacular package. And this comes at less than the price of a no options, no frills 911 Carrera. This should be the kind of car where I review it and say the only reason I haven't bought it is because everybody else in my road already has one. This should be the sort of car that when you speak to your petrolhead friends down the pub and they say they've bought one, you go, "Oh, crikey, not you as well." And yet, the Lotus Emira is none of those things. This is a car, in fact, that people seem desperate to get out of and not into. How did they manage that? How did Lotus achieve this? Particularly now they have the might of Geely behind them. They have near unlimited corporate resources. How do you get it so wrong? I've reviewed these cars before, but not one quite like this. And I've spoken about Lotus before, but just recently I had an epiphany. And it's one that I would like to share with you. Because I think, and it's a very, very sad thought, that maybe Lotus, certainly as we know it, is dead. Beyond that, maybe Lotus truly is over. And I think there is a chance, and I really do not like the notion of these words escaping my mouth, that that's a good thing. Why? Well, stay tuned for today's episode of JayEmm on Cars. This is about to get spicy. Cards on the table, just in case this video goes viral. Would be nice if it did, and you don't know who I am. Hello, my name is James, and I started this very channel with a video picking up my Lotus Evora 400. And much of that experience, I think, is going to come to bear in this. Because it seems that a lot of lessons from near a decade ago just haven't been learned. And it was only about a year after I picked up my car and started this channel that Lotus found itself with some good fortune, because they had a new owner, the Chinese firm Geely, who at that point had also acquired Volvo and their offshoot Polestar and the London Taxi Company, now known as the London Electric Vehicle Company. They also had a number of brands in their own home market, but naturally, as soon as the news was announced, people were concerned, because up until this point, Lotus was a firm that, though not stranger to corporate ownership, they'd previously been owned by the likes of JayEmm, for a long time they'd been kind of plodding along, with not much budget, but also not really much fear of anything big to do. However, Geely entered, and all of a sudden, we kind of knew what the future held. This was a firm that was going to have to start chucking out cars left, right, and centre. Now, the precise order of things I kind of forget, but not long after the acquisition, Geely said that they were setting up a factory in China with a production capacity of some 150,000 cars a year. Bear in mind that up until that point, Lotus had made just 100,000 cars, full stop. But though the numbers were never that great, the cars always were. And of course, there are many jokes about Lotus out there. But the simple fact is, you get behind the wheel of a Lotus, drive it, and I challenge you not to come out the other side with a whacking great big smile on your face. And, just in case you think I'm being a bit too much of a misery guts, I take great pleasure in saying this, the Emira, is no different. And what makes the Emira so great? Well, it's built on a nice bonded, extruded aluminium chassis, which, even though it is effectively the old Evora chassis underneath, that's fine, because the Evora's chassis was one of the best in the world. The 3.5 litre Toyota supercharged V6 out the back doesn't have the most power, 400 horses and 310 pounds-feet of torque. That's 420 newton meters. But that's more than enough to push this 1,450 kilo or thereabouts car down the road at a good pace. This one also, unlike the last Emira that I drove, has the Tour chassis. I argue a lot with people about suspension in sports cars because, you see, the general consensus seems to be that in a sports car the suspension should be stiff. My approach is that in a sports car, just as with every other kind of car, the suspension should only be as stiff as it needs to be. No more and no less. And this harks back to Colin Chapman, who was one of the first people in Formula One to really look at suspension as a way of making the car go faster. He didn't invent the concept, of course, but he is famous for it. He would measure the temperature of a tyre across its surface to make sure that all of it was in contact with the road, because a tyre that isn't touching the ground isn't helping you go faster. And that is the simple reason that I have such an issue with overly stiff suspensions in sports cars, because if the thing is so stiff that the wheel starts to skip, you can have the stickiest rubber in the world. You can have Cup 2Rs at temperature on a car. If they're not on the ground, they aren't helping you. Plus, what's fun about just being shaken around? Okay, evidently I'm in a minority here because lots and lots of people I know, including my buddy Ant, who is coming out with me in this car later on, love a stiff suspension. They love the idea of being jiggled about beyond belief because apparently that's fun and sporty and race car, don't you know? Well, yeah, sure, it might be a bit race car, but race cars are horrible, awful things. Anybody that's ever driven an actual race car will tell you that. The race car is not there to make you comfortable, to make you happy, to ease you after a long day at work. No, the race car is there for one thing and one thing only, and that's to go fast. And when it comes to sports cars, if you want speed, well, for reasons just mentioned, you need a supple suspension. Maybe this isn't the case everywhere in the world, but here in Britain, with our imperfect roads, a suspension like this will allow you to go quicker in something like this than just about any other supercar I care to mention. Sounds pretty darn good too, doesn't it? The old Evora always got a hard time for using this engine, the venerable Toyota 2GR FE, because you see, this is the engine you get in a Camry. And I always found that criticism particularly fascinating coming from the Americans, because this is the country, after all, that will put a nice, great big 7-litre muscle car engine into a motorhome. I remember one day hearing something that sounded like it was a NASCAR SKP coming up behind me and turning over to see, oh no, it's just an old postal truck. I mean, look, it may not be the most exciting engine that ever was, but this thing, it does the business. And the fundamentals of it are fairly solid. The 6-speed gearbox too. Early Evoras, they had a big problem with them, but they fixed it. And in here you can also see a little bit of that exposed linkage down below the lever. It's a work of art, and it does, for the most part, work quite well, though occasionally it is easy to get a little bit confused. But you know what? I don't mind. Nor do the looks really bother me all that much. When it came out, I wasn't really that keen on them. It looked a little bit generic, but now, you know what? I like this a lot. And I'll be perfectly honest about the fact that what upset me so much about the Emira was that when it was announced, Lotus called it an all-new car. Because it just isn't. You open this door and you can see very, very clearly this is an Evora in a fat suit. The Evora stops about here, and they've then put this massive door and body kit on the side of the thing to make it look a bit bigger and bulkier. It's a successful transformation, I will give it that. But to call this anything other than a revised version of an Evora, well, it's just disingenuous. The wheelbase is identical. The chassis is almost the same. Yes, there are differences, but not many of them. And what upset me about this so much was it made it clear to me that this new, brave, bold, exciting Lotus, they hadn't changed. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but dealing with Lotus PR is like trying to go to the dentist, then being told you have to extract your own teeth without anaesthetic, and then being charged anyway. Lotus are the only company out of all of them that I've dealt with, and if you know me, you'll know the things that I say. I'm not particularly good with being filtered. I will say what I feel. And in spite of that, Lotus, the company I spent years and years promoting, the company who I sang the benefits of from the rooftops while they themselves had no money at all, Lotus are the one and only company to ever threaten me. Yeah, it's true. Sent me a very, very spiteful email. I'm quite confident that my antics with McLaren cost the company a lot of money, but not once, not ever did they have a go at me. I mean, they didn't really talk to me full stop, but they also didn't have a go at me. I've accused Porsche dealers of outrageous things. They've not really mentioned it at all. As long as I show my workings, they don't mind. Lotus, though, do you know what I did to get a threat from their PR department? I drove my car with some different wheels on, and I said that if you wanted their lightweight ones, they wouldn't sell them to you because they weren't rated for the regular car. This is true. For some reason, it very much upset the company. I also said that I was personally upset at having had my supercharger fail on my car, which I took to the dealer, had to then rent my own courtesy car at a princely sum of £180 for a Hyundai i40 Estate for the week. And when I asked for that money to be reimbursed, my dealer told me, bear in mind, I bought the car for cash, not cash, but you know what I mean, without finance. I spent £68,000 with them, and I was told that I was not their problem because I hadn't brought the car to them for servicing. They were in Leeds, I was in East Anglia, and because I didn't bring the car to them, they felt no responsibility to me, in spite of the fact I spent a lot of money with them. I asked Lotus if they maybe wanted to do something for the inconvenience and all that, and they said no. And because I made these things public, Lotus had a right go at me and told me if I didn't watch my tone, I'd never get invited to their special influencer day that conveniently for them never happened. I mean, I'm kind of over it now, and some of the people that we're talking about here are no longer at the firm. And the cars are still brilliant. There is nothing, and I really mean nothing out there that works with the road as well as this. Driving this car, even for 10 minutes, makes me want to stop filming, get out, give Bell & Colville a call, and place an order. But I'm not going to. And I'll tell you for why. That is because from the moment that Geely took Lotus over, they learned absolutely nothing. I shall now present the evidence for the prosecution. Lotus previously didn't have much money. They had no resources. They struggled with even basic spare parts. When I had my Evora, things failed, and they told me they couldn't get replacements because they didn't have the spares. This is for a car they were currently building. They didn't have spares, right? Let that sink in. Let the lunacy of that sink in. But you know what? That's okay. It's not acceptable, is it? But it's almost understandable when the company is absolutely dying. It's struggling. It's got nothing, no resources, and a boss that, by the way, set a limit of no more than £10 for any claim that he didn't personally approve. Nuts, right? He's long gone. When Lotus got taken over, we knew that the old model lines, they weren't going to last all that long. The Elise was way out of date, as was the Exige, and the Evora was a great car, but also did really need a bit of modernising. It was obvious to everybody that the Evora was the only car which stood even a glimmer of hope of surviving the cull, and that seemed to be the case because this came out of the Evora, as much as Lotus might want to claim otherwise. But before the Elise and the Exige were discontinued, Lotus announced this big, new, exciting thing that they were working on. This was the first real thing to be announced under the company's new ownership. What was it? The Evija, a £2 million electric hypercar from Lotus. Lotus has never dabbled in the world of hypercars. In fact, Lotus hasn't really done a supercar for about 30 years. But this was more than supercar, this was hypercar. If Lotus were to come out with a car that was £200,000, that would have felt a bit strong. For them to come out with a car being 2 million seemed ludicrous. This has then gone on to become something of a running joke because they've only just started delivering them. About 5 years late, I should think. Okay, COVID and that got in the way, but COVID got in the way of everything. Plenty of other makers have managed to get their cars completed. Simple fact is, I think when they announced it, they realised very quickly nobody wanted it. They made a mistake by saying early on they'd sold out production, then backtracking and saying actually they'd sold out their first year's production. They then introduced a special edition for this apparently sold out car, the Fittipaldi. And I'm pretty sure that very few people actually bought one of those. Maybe they did sell, maybe existing orders got upgraded to one of those. But either way, this seemed just a lunatic thing to be building. This was not a car for your average Lotus customer that up until that point maybe spent 20 or 30 grand on a car. And okay, the days of being able to get a new sports car for that kind of money, especially with the depth of engineering you want from a Lotus, they're long gone, but come on. Then Emira appeared and they said, here you go. Here's this car. By the way, it's going to be £60,000 and it'll do this, and this. Now, they never sold one for £60,000, ever. In fact, today, a new one, if you want the 4-cylinder Turbo SE, that's just under £90,000. And if you want this, the V6, that's £92,000. Option it up and it's £100,000. Okay, everything has gone up in that time, and to my eyes, this does look like a £100,000 car. But in here, it doesn't feel it. This seat, the car's only got 3 and a bit thousand miles on the clock. The seat is already wearing. That's embarrassing. And the seat itself is quite an uncomfortable affair as well. I just don't really know what Lotus were thinking. This is not nice. The controls down here are in a silly place. They're almost touching the center console. The screen here is okay. But you know what? I think that sort of stuff people are willing to put up with. People are willing to live with it because it looks good, it sounds good, and it drives good. But what people aren't willing to put up with is being treated poorly. When you've put your faith and your money into a company, especially a risky one like Lotus, you don't want to be made to feel a fool. And the customers of these were. When they announced them, when they told people what they were, I looked at this and thought, hang on a minute, that suspension sits too low, the car's making a lot of noise, though I'll be honest, the production one makes more noise than I thought it could. And I just got the sensation that people were being hoodwinked because what they were quoting for was the 4-cylinder, what they were showing you was the 6-cylinder. This to me it's not cricket. Even today, on the Lotus website, I mean on the front page, they pretend like the Emira doesn't even exist. You have to scroll down to find it or click a button. But they're using pictures of it with spacers on and with a lowered suspension, so it looks cooler. That's not cool. That's not cool at all. And because of when these came out, lots and lots and lots of people put down their deposit because they had a bit of money and they'd seen what had happened with the GR Yaris and they thought this was going to be the next big thing. But Lotus then didn't communicate, didn't talk to people, didn't give them information, didn't tell them when their car was going to be ready. People started getting itchy, people started getting worried, people started thinking, you know what, I haven't even got the car yet. They're not communicating with me. And they weren't communicating with their dealers. Dealers exist because they're the customer's point of contact, and the dealers themselves should then talk to the factory. This means the customers should never have to talk with the factory directly. But the factory didn't want to talk with anybody. And this is not new. This is how Lotus has basically always been. They've been useless, but now they gave the dealers even less reason to want to be helpful because they changed the way they sold their cars. Previously, they'd get a commission, but now they'd get a fixed fee per car sold. And they made their dealers do a lot, go through changes of interior, redo their showrooms, in order to be able to be worthy of selling Lotus cars. They still do little to nothing in the way of advertising. They should have given every single journalist out there one of these for a year, and they'd have flown off the shelves. Well, maybe, maybe not. Lotus dealers themselves are a bit of a mixed bag. There's one or two that are brilliant, and I'll never ever stop saying good things about Bell and Colville. JCT 600, they can get in the bin. They're awful, as are many of the others I've had the misfortune of dealing with. Lotus need to make sure that every single dealer out there is excellent, but maybe they didn't care because maybe the Emira was only ever a stopgap car to get them what they wanted, which is the Electra and the Emea. Now, we knew these cars were coming, big, Chinese-built electric SUV and latterly saloon in the form of the Emea. And I just thought, you know what's going to happen with Lotus? They're going to build these cars, they're going to build them, they're going to be better than they ever were, they're going to have technology in them that old Lotus couldn't even think about, and they're maybe not going to be exciting to drive anymore, but they're just going to work. And those cars are going to sell because this is what Porsche do. They sell Cayennes and things, and that is how the 911 GT3 is allowed to exist. Now, somehow Lotus got those wrong too. My friend Ben from Dad Cars had an Electra. Something went wrong with the key, so the thing had to be dragged off of his driveway. I reviewed one. The guy who had that, it broke down on the very first journey he had with it, and then the dealer cocked something up, meaning the car was bricked for months. It's a £150,000 car, by the way. Dealers have cars with problems that they say they can't fix. They need someone from China to come over and sort them out. Not going to work, is it really? Every EV out there, especially pricey ones, is depreciating like nothing else. Lotus have this factory, remember I told you, where they can build 150,000 cars a year?
Well, in 2024, they sold just shy of 7,000 cars out of that factory, globally. Total Lotus sales were record-breaking, but in this context, that means just over 12,000 cars. To put it another way, somewhere between the annual outputs of Ferrari and Lamborghini. The 911 itself outsold Lotus by a factor of 4 to 1. In another world, this might not be a problem. I don't want Lotus to be a volume brand, but its owners do, and that's how they've set the company up. They're spinning this news every way they can, but the simple fact is, last year the company lost $1 billion, which might be fine if the products were well developed, loved by consumers and journalists, and the company was building a great foundation for its future. But it isn't. As with just about every company, there are rumours they may be backpedaling from their total commitment to EV, but it is likely too little, too late. So, how are they solving the problem? Are they fixing quality, listening to customers, helping out their dealers? No. Instead, they've released a new ad campaign with terribly mixed audio, baffling visuals, and a frankly insulting reference to Lotus's lightweight philosophy. This from the company now building 2.7-ton EVs. Their previous campaign was just as offensive, for the drivers, as we knew they were ending the Elise, the Exige, and making the Evora slower and heavier while introducing a £2 million hypercar. It is almost as if the blame of failure is being placed on the very people who supported the company for decades and were loyal to it, even when it demonstrated clearly it did not care for them.
And I think that's because, fundamentally, this is kind of part of my epiphany, Lotus has no care for people. It doesn't care about the people that work for them. It doesn't care about the dealers that work for them. It doesn't care about the customer. doesn't care about the customer experience. It often felt like being a Lotus customer was being an inconvenience to the factory. Having to turn up with something that had broken in a new and interesting way was very, very annoying for them. But you're sat there with your car you've just paid lots of money for, and they're treating you like a pest. I'm sure I was a pest to them at some point. I regret nothing. And this was such a great chance for them to have a reset, a reboot. People were so excited about this. All you needed to do, all you had to do, Lotus, was send some emails, keep people in touch, invite them for a factory tour, tell them when their car is actually going to be built. Oh, and by the way, when you tell people that you're not going to put prices up, and then you put the prices up, that's not a great way to win hearts and minds either. Lotus had this amazing showroom over in London, just off Piccadilly Circus. A fascinating place, a remnant of the old Danny Bahar days. But I went there just before COVID, and the place was, well, it was heartbreaking because it was nearly empty. I can't remember if they even had a car in there. They might have done. They had a couple of racks of stuff being sold off at discount prices, and one or two people in there that didn't really know anything about Lotus or the cars. There was an amazing opportunity there to build the brand. You can do so much without even having a car to sell. There's so many great drivers and great cars that Lotus have built. Get some classic Team Lotus merch in there. Do a wall of Senna-inspired stuff. Have people in there. Do talks. Get Martin Donnelly down there to speak about what it was like to drive for Lotus. Get Peter Wright down there. Get Chris Dinage down there. Get all these people that have something to do with the factory down there. Get Mike Kimberley down there. All these old Lotus people. Put an Esprit in there. Put something cool in there. Come on, there's so much stuff you could have done. Get the merchandise up and running again. The previous boss, for some reason, thought that he didn't want it. He didn't like it. I mean, come on, you've been a teenager, right? When you're a teenager, you can't afford this car, but you maybe can afford the t-shirt, the pen, the notebook, the trainers. There's so much stuff you can do to try and make a bit of money and build your brand. And yet somehow, I thought the worst case scenario for Lotus was they were going to be this great, big, huge, successful company that ultimately just made soulless, unexciting cars. Now I worry, with just about everything they build having been a relative disaster, and it, from my eyes, being self-inflicted with poor quality control, a lack of care about customer service and everything else, now I think maybe the firm deserves to fail. Because perhaps car companies need to be taught a lesson that you can't just go and buy something like Lotus, try and slap the badges on some big, fast, but ultimately uninspiring thing, have it not work properly, and still succeed. Maybe what needs to happen here is the company needs to fail, and fail spectacularly. I would love in some dream world for some eccentric billionaire to go and buy it and return it to its roots, chucking out driver-focused sports cars. But I just don't think it's going to happen. And the sad thing is here, the really sad thing is that Lotus is actually full, packed with great people. It always has been. Dedicated, passionate people that love the brand, love the heritage, love the engineering, love driving. But the people running the place, the people at the top, for a long, long time now, they have been utterly clueless about the majesty of what it is they're in charge of and the importance, the ludicrous importance of making your customer happy. Just look at Lexus. They built the best car in the world in the LS, but that's not what made them a success. Looking after customers did. You make a customer happy, and even if something goes wrong, that's an opportunity to turn somebody from someone that was going to leave your brand into a lifelong customer. Look after the people, they'll look after your company. But Lotus, I couldn't see that. And that makes me sad. Because in that company is some incredible talent, and I want it to survive and thrive. So, there we have it. Am I being an old misery guts? Probably, but it's fun on occasion. And this car, the Emira, you know what? Lotus owners aren't being looked after. Customer support is a joke. I mean, I'll tell you about Lotus attention to detail, right? In the B-roll, when they released these, one of the switches down here, which is all plastic and flimsy and horrible, it was cracked. The genuine, proper B-roll footage from Lotus showed the car broken. Maybe they'll never learn. Maybe this is the only way. But I hope there is another way. Anyway, I want to say a big thank you to Frank for lending me his car, probably for the last time now, and of course to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.